Incoherent response, were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought?
All right, welcome to the Author Brand Show. I'm your host, Doug Crowe. We're going to get plenty of rational thoughts today, despite our little humorous opening here. My guest today is probably one of the most influential, impactful people on the planet that you may not know yet. He's a co-founder of a company called Vayomar. It's a global consulting firm. He's worked with leading global brands, hypergrowth startups all across industries and countries. He's been all over the world. He's wide range of management, communication methodologies designed in order to enhance its customer internal capabilities. It's a mouthful. The guy is brilliant in terms of history, psychology, behavioral economics, neurosciences, business, and leadership. He's the author of the book, You're Not Moving Slow Enough. Great title, which focuses on the link between our emotional intelligence and our ability to influence others without authority or authoritative stuff. It's grateful stuff. It's just wonderful. He talks about 3 critical errors called gratification traps. We'll talk about that. He holds a BA in government strategy and diplomacy studies. I can't say that. Diplomacy studies. With an MA in counterterrorism and homeland security, both from the interdisciplinary school in Israel. I can't name the city. Ariel, help me out with that in a second. He's also a proud but not too annoying vegan. Welcome to the show to my good friend and author, Ariel Halevi. How you doing?
My ego is over the moon. I need to have you do this every week for me.
You just say the word. I'll come on. I will talk more about why in a second. But how do I pronounce the city there?
Herzliya. But they've since changed the name to Reichman University. That's now the official name of that academic institution.
Oh, that's much easier to say. Okay, cool.
Yes.
Listen, before we get going here on your amazing history, I want to give people a reason to pay attention to us for 20, 30 minutes. And we hinted on it in the green room beforehand. But so why should people pay attention to us for the next few minutes on this podcast? It's a very important thing. It probably relates to your title, but you go ahead and tell us why.
Well, I was sharing with you some of my personal experiences over the last few months. I'm speaking to you now from Tel Aviv, Israel, and our country is going through a very turbulent time. Right. Not that that's news in the past 75 years, but generally speaking,
75
only, and ever since we've had the most remarkable several years. We had four elections in 2 years. Because no party won enough votes to set up a government, because we're a coalition government. And then in the 5th election, they were able to do something very crazy. And then the 6th election, the opposing government and Bibi Netanyahu came back to power, and just the country exploded with hundreds of thousands of people protesting. And I found myself in a very uncomfortable situation where I couldn't associate with any of the groups. Everybody was being polarized.
It was simple. Here, to give people perspective, Americans see this a lot in their level, right? Because we talked about this during the we did our mock interview with Trump and who was that with? Oh, with Hillary, right? We did a mock interview for your book about that, and the company was a little bit polarized, and it got worse. Now it's getting worse after COVID, but nothing compares to what's happening where you are. So because you and I both, I've been tuned out from the news, right? Like I don't watch that garbage. It's just propaganda. But having lived there now, tell people exactly what's going on in more detail about this. You said potential civil war, I guess, right?
So Israel is a first world country, generally very liberal, and a very, very thriving democracy, except that there is a very complicated demographic situation in the country where 20% of the citizens are Arab, another 20% are ultra-Orthodox religious. Then you have a spectrum of different levels of faith. Then you have the secular party, and generally speaking, you have the parliament that passes laws. You have the government that executes policy, and then you have the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And there's always been a delicate balance between these 3 governmental entities. And now this new government that got elected came in and said, we're not happy with the balance of power between these 3 entities. We think that the Supreme Court needs to be put in check.
Okay.
Now, this government is, in my very subjective opinion, the absolute worst since the foundation of this country, absolute worst government. But when and I've been disconnected from the news for many years. Because you and I, we've spoken about it. You know, if you don't listen to the news, you're uninformed. But if you do, you're misinformed.
I love that. Yeah, it's good.
And it just poisons your brain.
Yep.
But I said I couldn't ignore it anymore because the country was burning around me. So I started listening to the news, and I did. You remember, you and I in the book we spoke about, you know, if you want to be persuasive, start with understanding the other person's point of view, not with pushing your own. I was absolutely sure by default that my point of view would have been X, because I knew I was against this government, and everybody in my peer group and in my reference group were against this new legal reform. So I said, I'm going to start by reading and watching the people who I don't agree with.
Exactly right.
So I start finding these interviews, these videos, and by the way, I try to steer away from any third-party reporting. I look for original sources where it's an interview with the politician, unedited, one shot, just so that I can get it straight from the source. And I start moving uncomfortably in my seat because I'm listening to these politicians that I'm supposed to not agree with, making really good points. And I said, okay, this is uncomfortable for me.
Love this.
But I took notes and I wrote it down, and I said, okay, now I'm going to go hear the other side, my side, so to speak.
Right.
And I'm listening, and there's this guy they're giving a speech, and then they're giving another one. I'm like, they're not making sense. This doesn't, because I used to be like, I used to compete competitively at a debate in college, right? Captain of my debate club and all that stuff.
Quick aside, he's won a couple of national championships in debate, folks. He's not just making this up. You're glossing over. I know years ago. It doesn't matter.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what am I going to do? I mean, the entire, political cohort that I am traditionally, demographically, politically opposed to, just suggested a really good reform.
Yeah.
And all the people who are my peer group, who I support, who we share values in, are failing to make any real sense of what's happening. And it was very difficult because we got to a point where obviously I got sucked into it badly. And I violated every single principle in the book that I had written with you. And I antagonized and I cornered them logically, and I out-debated them. And at some point, my sister and my mother were like, we don't want to talk about this anymore. No more politics in the chat.
Yeah.
And then my friends, some of them were like, we're very disappointed in you. How could a smart guy like you have an opinion? I'm like, but you haven't even heard me out. It doesn't matter. This is wrong. They're killing the country. This is going to become a dictatorship. Now, I'm looking at the politicians who I know their record, and they're criminals, and they're extremists, and they're racist. And very, very oddly, the reform that they're putting forward is actually very good. And what do you do with that situation? And then I decided I actually had a few weeks of as close as I could get to really feeling depressed. There was a very heavy feeling. And then I said, I got to snap out of this. What can I do? I said, you know what? I'm going to translate my book to Hebrew for the first time after 7 years since we wrote it together?
Yep.
Forever, this book you're the godfather of this book. It would not have happened without you. And I said, okay, I'm going to translate it to Hebrew. Yeah. So I start getting transcripts. And I'm reading the book and I'm like, you idiots. You idiot. You didn't do this. You didn't do that. You wrote this book. How could you have done it? How could you have botched it up so badly? And it brought me back to my basics. And then I completely rebooted my entire attitude. And suddenly I started finding people who were, some were burnt. Some were out, like my sister, my mother, some friends. Let's not talk about it. But other people, I started coming at it at a completely different approach that was less rational, more emotional intelligence based, all that stuff. And but I was amazed. I was amazed at how badly I had steered away from the very model that I had developed. And it just goes to show, it's hard.
It is extremely hard. We all need to read our own books. I'll tell you a quick story if you want to hear it. But when I was, I had a big rise in the real estate world, and an equally large, but much more accelerated fall back in 2008, where I lost 19 foreclosures, bankruptcy, divorce, the whole shooting match. And I used to be Mr. Positive, president of the class, all that stuff. Here I am, like broke and homeless, just pissed off. I mean, I go back to read Zig Ziglar, like, oh, what a jerk, Nothing, no self-help book could save Doug. It was this time. And I'm driving the road one day, trying to go sell windows or something. I'm like, I got to make some money. And I put this CD in my car. And Ariel, no joke, 9 months of clinical depression gone in 6 seconds.
Really?
Evaporated. Like, who's this guy in the CD? As I go to pull it out, oh my gosh. It was me. I didn't recognize my own voice. I was doing a goal setting seminar back in my real estate days. I'm like, I didn't recognize the voice until I pulled the CD out and looked at, oh shit, it's me.
Isn't that amazing?
And that's when I realized you're right. We have to actually connect with our core when we're at peace and calm or translating or something to snap us out of it, because our cognitive confirmation bias, all the words you want to use there, frame us up, are destroying our soul or ability to connect and impact and influence and stuff. It's
asymmetrical warfare between the mass media channels and the social media platforms and our brain. It's an asymmetrical. We can't win. It's pretty remarkable. And I immediately I went to the internet and I immediately said, okay, I'm going to start changing. I'm going to start intervening in certain online posts. And I started sharing stories about, I was flying back to Israel and I didn't notice, but I dropped my passport with everything. I didn't even know I dropped it.
Oh my God.
And I'm waiting for my girlfriend to come out of the bathroom at the airport. And I hear somebody say, Ariel, and I'm Ariel Halevi. And I'm like, that's funny. There's another guy here with my name. I didn't, honestly, I was so, and then I hear him again. And he says, he gives me, the travel bag with my passports and cash and everything. And I wrote on Facebook and I said, he had no idea what my political views are, and I had no idea what his were, and he helped me, and I took the help, and a week before, I was on a scooter, I crashed in the middle of the street, 5 people ran to help me. They didn't know what my politics were, and I didn't know what theirs politics. Like, we cannot allow political views unless they are just the most, if somebody comes up and says, let's exterminate a certain people, fight it with everything you have.
Right.
But the polarization that is happening is very, very dangerous. Like it is an existential threat to the stability of our societies.
Or the planet, if you want to extrapolate that out a little bit.
Yeah, I can accept that.
It's bad. Matter of fact, we need to talk about this maybe offline, but I started working on a book, probably inspired by you a little bit, but inspired by a political conversation I had with a family member. And it was extreme. Like, whoa, this is really weird. I don't understand even what you're saying here. And because it was family, I couldn't motivate, influence, cajole, nothing. Like, all right, let me set aside my beliefs, completely set them aside, just like you did. And keep my values, but beliefs, maybe I'm wrong about everything I think. And I started listening, because this really comes from your book. I'm like, wow, it's really amazing how the connection and the relationship improved. Now,
almost instantaneously, almost like the hearing of your CD in the car.
And it's not active listening, folks. It's way deeper than that. And so I had a title I'll share with you later, but it's based on, it's a simpler version of what you do probably. It's a curiosity. And if you can, like Adam Grant talks about it in one of his books, but I think you can set aside your values and really focus on being genuinely curious about the other person. Rapport happens from not what we have in common, but from curiosity, from being interested in somebody, regardless, like, hey, tell me about your X, Y, and Z, whatever it is. But I like, it's so needed. And the asymmetrical warfare thing, you and I both tuned out of the news. I haven't watched a complete newscast since 9/11.
And you're better off for it, believe me. And I think that
but how can we help other people? I mean, the only problem is the only way to get to people is mass media, social or otherwise. And the grassroots, we're going to start thinking, sending letters to a million people.
I don't think I mean, how do we get to people, you and I think,
Yeah.
you know, somebody said to me a sentence today that I loved. He said, anything beyond trying to help one person is romantic
Yeah.
and political. Like once you start thinking about
yeah.
influencing more than one person, you're into romanticism and politics.
Politics.
Yeah, you know, the idea is first take care of yourself. You know, for me, I shifted my attention inward. I said, where did I lose the road?
Yeah.
And I started, this is about a month ago, I made a decision with myself that my next challenge for my own growth is going to be adopting non-functional radical listening. Meaning, I'm going to listen not so I can achieve something at the end of the call, not so I can give you a counter argument based on what you said, not so I can hack your persona and figure out what's the best way to persuade you. I'm going to listen with only one intention in mind, which is to understand who you are and where you're coming from. And that's it. I don't want anything from you. I don't want to influence you. And what that did to me in the few conversations that I was able to stick to, because the habits are so deeply ingrained, right? Was I suddenly found myself taking the conversation in directions I had never gone before, or asking follow-up questions that were curious.
Bingo.
But I wasn't able to be curious as much before because I was too busy analyzing what I was hearing for a purpose that was beside what the person was saying. So this whole non-functional radical listening thing for me, that's at least my next mission. And I think it's going to take me a few years. It just goes against everything that I've
No, we don't have a few years. Gabe, we got to get this one done. That's a great title, by the way, because it's a mouthful and you can get that domain.
Look at you.
I'm marketing right. Non-functional. I wrote it down. I'm gonna make you get that domain. Non-functional radical listening. You got to actually think when you say that sentence, because it's, first of all, the word non-functional, right? That's going to be what? And then radical and listening. People go, radical. It's a great title.
Just imagine being, and I think you put the format for, you put the foundation for it. If you were immensely curious about somebody else without having any agenda except eating up everything they have to give you so that you can get a better picture of who they are.
Yeah.
For no other reason except now you know.
Yep.
That's it. How would that affect the conversation? I don't know. For me, it's difficult. It's like meditation. I start doing it and I forget within 2 minutes. I'm thinking again instead of breathing.
We need to create a hypnosis program for it, because I started working on my book about this. I'm like, wow, this could work for relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. This is everything.
I put down there, the subtitle was like better sex, more money, and world peace. If everyone would just
not necessarily in that order.
Yeah,
not necessarily in that order.
I don't know. I think it probably would work, but you think about if you're actually genuinely curious about somebody and have that non-functional radical listening, so many things happen at once, right? They open up more, they connect more, and because of that, I'm sure the reciprocity, they might actually listen to you more later. My project with my family member, I already marked it down. It's like a 5-year project. It's not going to happen quick. I can tell you right now, it's not going to go fast. But I believe within 5 years, I can actually eventually, well, what do you think about this? As opposed to listening, I can plant a seed of like, maybe you can listen now to what you're saying, So.
Yeah. But again, but the key is, how do you go into it? Even if you know that there might be some kind of byproduct, even if you know that there might be some kind of functionalization of the dynamic, even if it's in 5 years,
right? It's still bad.
Well, I think initially, at least, it pollutes the mindset.
Right.
I think you can, and we're not machines. Well, we're not the kind of machines we tend to think of machines, but if you can actually go into a conversation in the purest possible form and say, I'm an alien from space, I have zero skin in the game of humanity, and all I care about is understanding who is Doug Crowe and what does he think about X, and I have no opinion. I don't know. I just want to know what he thinks.
No opinion works, but agenda is going to be hard because we're hardwired for fight or flight, for survival, or growth or death. There's no way.
Only as an initial response. If you then move from your amygdala, so to speak, to your prefrontal cortex, do they say count to 10?
Yeah.
Why do they say repeat what the other person said? Why do they? because if you give yourself a minute, your frontal cortex can catch up with your reptilian brain.
Right.
And then that fight flight dissipates very quickly.
Okay.
So it's, and I'm not, listen, I have yet to master this myself. I'm not even remotely close. So who's to say if what I'm talking about even makes sense?
Well, based on your methodology to end terrorism, which we should talk about too, it definitely works, because like you just said, if it can work for one person, it can work for two.
I agree. And yeah, I think this is part of the universal approach. I think that can you imagine if for 1 week, the only thing people did in any kind of interaction with other people was just listen? Oh my God. And it doesn't mean both sides can't speak. It just means that when one is speaking, the other one isn't responding.
Yeah.
There's, Doug, tell me what you think about, let's take a very, very non-volatile topic, abortions.
I tried that one last month, didn't work.
Tell me what you think about abortions or gun control. You can tell me, and I'll spend half an hour listening as if I have no opinion. No, I just want to get your point of view. When we're done, I'll tell you my opinion, not as an answer to what you said, as if I went first.
Mm-hmm.
Is that realistic? I don't know. That's a big one.
No, it should probably be taught at like the at the 5-year-old level, where, because we get so much experience or opinion and crust on us, it's hard for us to actually listen without having an agenda, I guess, is a
or
thing,
just get a corrective AI implant.
Oh no, thank you, not a chance. So I already hinted at your paper on ending terrorism, so we got to answer that one. It was so brilliant what you did, and people need to know that there's an answer to it, and maybe it would also apply to our mass shootings here in the United States. So tell us your methodology for that, and I think maybe it'll catch on.
You're referencing one of the papers I wrote in my master's degree.
Yep. The no PR.
Yes. So basically, my paper was the title was Quarantining the Psychological Impact of Terrorism. Mm-hmm. And I introduced this concept, which I call the paradox of rationality. And if you ask people from the West, in developed countries, from moderate societies, they'll tell you we're rational and the terrorists are non-rational. What rational person would blow themselves up or believe in an afterlife or 72 virgins or whatever? Right. And I said, it doesn't even matter which side is rational and which isn't. If you can equalize the equation, terrorism ends. So I'll explain. And I began by trying to prove that the terrorists and anybody using terrorism is actually rational. Mm-hmm. And I gave a thought experiment that said, if a terrorist gets two options, take a terrorist organization like Hamas, or a Million Tigers or whatever, and you say to them, we'll give you two options, you choose, whichever you want. Option number one, a bomb explodes in the center of Tel Aviv, 70 people die, 200 injured, zero media coverage. We're your enemy, you want to kill as many as you can, right? Option number two, bomb goes off in Tel Aviv, 2 people die, 15 injured, massive media coverage worldwide, 24-hour cycle, repeats, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, you name it. Yeah. And I said to people, what do you think they would choose? Now, if they were truly non-rational, the answer would be flip a coin. Or go for the thing that gives you the most emotional satisfaction. But there wasn't one person who said to me, yeah, they're going to choose the latter. They're going to choose less casualties, more media coverage. And I said, okay, so we know that they're rational in that terrorism is simply a means to achieving an outcome. And that outcome isn't physical death. In fact, modern day terrorism is the form of warfare that generates the lowest amount of casualties, but the greatest amount of emotional and psychological damage.
Wow. Hold on. I got that one thinking. That's so powerful, because it's the emotional damage of the. Yeah. Okay.
That's the very word, terror, fear.
Yeah, right.
To be debilitated by fear, to lose your sense. And I said, so why are we more afraid of a terrorism attack than we are even of getting into a car, mm-hmm, when the casualty levels and the chance of being hit are minuscule? Even when you have a lot, it's minuscule compared to any other type of war. Mm-hmm. I said, actually, we're not rational. We're letting it get to us. And so instead of spending, I don't know how many billions of dollars trying to simply prevent the attack, what if we redirected some of our efforts, not all of them, to quarantining the psychological impact of the event, which is actually not the event itself, but the amplifying impact of the media that reports the event to you live in loops with images of the event, with bodies in the streets. And I wrote a paper that said media should not be allowed to do any kind of live video covering of an attack. They can report from the field, they can use audio. And then I started exploring, well, what the domino effect of this would be, because Israel cannot prohibit international media like CNN from reporting. So I said, okay, so what would happen if a foreign media agent reported the same event and you consumed it online? Government can't control that kind of media. And I said, so I designed a few more experiments. I said, okay, first of all, semantics and language. If I'm listening to this from a foreign reporter in a foreign language, they're using words like there, it happened there, versus the local media that says it happened here. And so the psychological impact of an event that happened there, the argument would be lower than an event that happened here. If I'm watching international media online, because I can't see it in the main, so I'm probably not watching it from my TV, 15-inch TV in the center of my living room. I'm probably watching it on YouTube or on a website from my computer or my phone. So I started looking at psychological impact of the medium through which the news is being promoted. Size of screen, language barrier, there versus here. When are you listening to the news? So if you listen to the local news, it's an event. It's 8 p.m. Everybody sits in the living room and they're watching this thing happen in their living room because the brain doesn't realize that it's
that's right.
But if I'm watching it on my phone, I'm probably doing it at work. I'm distracted. I'm not fully attentive. I'm not getting a full screen, 50-inch, 80-inch. So the idea was either we cause ourselves to become more rational, and then if both equations are equal, if we're rational and they're rational, terrorism is over. If we remain irrational, but we can cause them to be irrational, terrorism is over.
Wow.
But if one side, if they're rational and we're irrational, we're screwed. And that was the paradox of rationality. That was basically the basis of the paper. And then, there were whole arguments about, well, what about freedom of the press? And I said, well, freedom of the press, I'm not preventing the information from being reported. In fact, there was great media even before television existed. And there was media before internet existed. So they can report it. They can even show pictures in the newspapers. They cannot report live. They can't give me the full impact of video. And only pertaining to local news channels. That was the proposed policy, but it was just a paper. It never got picked up.
Never got anywhere. You have a chance to have any terrorists vote on that first part, did you? The 2 versus 50. Not that you know any. I'm just saying, maybe someone.
I don't want them to know my name. I don't want them to know I exist.
No. Wow. Yeah. I still think that there's something about that has power to it in terms of you don't put a spotlight on things that you want to go away. It works for taxes and it works for this.
You can report it. You just don't have to let it. Do you remember when there was the whole thing of ISIS decapitating the American reporter?
Yeah, Nick Berg. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Do you know what the PR dollar value was of the amount of coverage that event received? That event being broadcast the way that it was, basically. The people who decapitated him could not have wished for greater support and collaboration from the audience they were trying to influence, which is what they call in terrorism the theater of war, right? So when a terrorist attacks, they have 3 audiences they're focusing on. The first audience is their home base. They need to demonstrate that they're fighting for their people.
Right.
The second audience is the enemy, and the third audience is third-party public opinion.
Yeah, right.
And what the mass media did was basically build a partnership, not intentionally. I don't think anybody had bad intentions, except if it bleeds, it leads, and it gets rating. But what they did was if terrorism was the car, media was the fuel.
Yeah.
And we did it to ourselves.
Now I'm depressed like you were a while ago.
No, don't be. I'll tell you why. Because what ends up happening, and this definitely happened in Israel, was humans are incredibly adaptive, and we adapted.
Yeah.
And so even without media intervention, we ultimately became more rational. That and the technology gap, in our case, between us and those who would harm us, became so asymmetrical that our superior ability to collect intelligence and to prevent events became almost, which is why today we're dealing with rockets.
Right, right.
But then there's an anti-rocket system. So, I don't know. But this was a long time ago. I'm talking to you about this paper I wrote back in 2008.
Yeah,
so
I know it's old news, but I still love the story, and I still, it's the problem is the the neuroscience, the limbic brain it runs the show, and we slow down for the car wreck because we might get in one. When so our brain is, they try to think in the 80s, they tried like a good news station and nobody watched.
I know it doesn't work. It does
Nobody
not work.
watched it.
But I'll tell you, if it were up to me, one of the things, I think you and I had spoken about this. I am now exploring with some partners and friends and some really smart people, the birthing of a new industry, which would be the anti-bias industry. Think about an industry that is dedicated. It's dedicated to funding projects that operate like a firewall to the human brain, so that if I'm viewing anything on my screen, or it recognizes the signals, categorizes them based on which biases they trigger, and then interjects.
Yeah,
I want to hear your thoughts. Go through.
Well, I think I remember seeing your software about analyzing speeches before. You could analyze.
No, that's a whole different. That's a whole
stuff. But who's making the shield, and what's it? I go back to like who's running the control.
No, I'll give you. No, that's great. I love that you said that.
Yeah.
The shield takes instructions from the user. So I'll give you 2 examples. Okay. Imagine you had a dial on your Facebook page.
Yeah.
And that dial.
I was dialed to off, but okay. No,
not off. It's a polarity dial.
Yeah.
So I have 4,000 friends I'm connected to on Facebook. I only see a small fraction of them based on the feed, because the Facebook algorithm chooses for me. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
What this polarity dial would do, it would run in the back, it would scan all my friends and all their feeds, and it would compare it with the feeds that Facebook is showing me. And it would compare it with the feeds that Facebook is showing my friends. And based on that, it would say, you're in an echo chamber. The feeds you're seeing are only those of people who agree with you. You're at 78% polarity. Do you want to go down to 65%? Move the dial.
Yeah.
And then the AI takes control of my mouse and starts, while I'm not working on the computer, clicking on like re-educating Facebook's algorithm to pretend that to change my behavioral habits, to calibrate the algorithm. Facebook's not against me. Facebook just wants my attention. It wants money.
It's taking my attention. Yeah, right.
So imagine if I said I want to be less polarized. So what it would do is it would analyze feeds that I'm not seeing, and it would click on them, and it would share them, and it would comment automatic comments for it. And gradually my feed would become more diverse, and my polarity dial would move to 65, and so on and so forth. That's an example of an innovation that would be one out of all kinds of innovations.
Oh my gosh.
Through this new industry that says people are not strong enough to fight the impact of technology. We need technology to fight technology for us. And first you had cars, then you had seatbelts.
That's right. That's right.
First we had social media. Now we have to have seatbelts for social media. And it's a project that I'm working on with several people to see. We want to put together a fund, and then we begin with a competition of ideas. Winner gets a few tens of thousands of dollars, and then the fund invests in the winning ideas. So that's something we're toying with. Apropos what we were saying before about, again, how is the media influencing our mindset, for example?
Right. Okay, you could. I'll let you do this project on one condition.
Shoot.
You're not allowed to have any big tech investment money, because they would use that weapon. They would weaponize that for evil versus for good. So it's got to be like limit it like a political contribution. No contribution above a certain amount. Make sure that it's only in the hands of the people, not the big players. Because
I'm not sure. I think that I'm not entirely sure. I think they're that evil. I think, you know what? I think they're bureaucratic, and I think they're single-minded. You put a group of people together and you give them a task, make more money, and they try to optimize the product.
That's true. Yeah.
It's unintended consequences, what we're seeing here. Just like the Industrial Revolution, nobody intended for it to contribute so greatly to pollution, right?
Yeah, right.
So it's I think actually we would want to have the big players involved, but I think they wouldn't want to. I think they would see us as a threat to their business.
Yeah.
Which is why
if you could show them that the algorithm would increase view time, they could still sell ads. It would still probably benefit them as long as they didn't get involved with the dial, right?
I'm not sure it would, but I'm not sure it would. You know, I read in a book recently, they said when fast food came, it was about giving people tasty food faster and cheaper.
Right.
Nobody intended that it would lead to a health crisis. Exactly.
Right.
They're now talking about the equivalent of not fast food, fast data.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and I think if we slow down fast data, we will impact the fast food industry. So the question, I'm not sure it would increase. I'm not sure it would increase viewing time, which is why I think we might have to have regulation involved as well. It would have to be.
Yeah,
like
you're right, because it's controversy that he has that limbic brain to go and want to click and see more because it gets you going.
Can you think of any sound more intriguing than a knock on the door?
Intriguing?
If somebody knocked on your door right now,
yeah,
your attention would be stolen immediately.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. That's the like, the share, the ping notification.
And dopamine. Boom. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, keep me posted. That's a good concept. We just gotta make sure it tracks well. I like the idea. As a matter of fact, part of the project I was working on with my one buddy was it's basically LinkedIn for startups type of concept. And I said, instead of having the algorithm be set by the advertisers, what is set by the user? It's kind of similar to what you said there, right? So they could set it for what they want to see. Right.
Empower the user, create an intervention. Let's say I'm going to go on CNN or Fox or whatever. I'm going to read an article.
Yeah.
Before the article loads on my page, the AI takes all adjectives, lists them.
Yes. Takes the adjectives out.
And then it says to me, here's a list of adjectives and here are synonyms. Pick the ones you want. It plugs them into the article and only then you see the article. And then it tells you, by the way, based on your choices, you're biased to this area. You're biased to this area, and so on.
Well, you must have read my mind. I did an analysis on a CNN and Fox article about a year ago, and I removed adjectives for it, and got like 99% same article.
Yes.
When I left the adjectives in. It was all like polarizing. Like, okay, some more ads, but same news, same topic, same words except the adjectives.
Listen, hopefully we can get all this done before AI takes over anyway.
For the Matrix. Yeah, I talked to the chief data scientist at Intel a few years ago, talking about doing a book, of course, and he's big into AI, right? Before it got really popular this year. And I said, hey, listen, Melvin, I've seen these movies, I've seen Terminator, Matrix, all these things. I'm a little bit scared of all this stuff. And he said, oh, now this, think about it. And he started explaining to me, there were like 200,000 IT jobs that are unfulfilled with like 80 of the job descriptions they haven't finished yet. Like, how do you teach a human being to replicate, the muscles of your hand, the thousands of muscles there in a robot? I mean, you need someone to understand, biology and robotics.
But have you seen some of the latest robotic advancements?
Yeah. It's like jumping and picking up stuff.
Push them, they have balance. They can't.
Yeah.
Listen, I think whatever they think is coming, there's an amazing book I recommend. If anybody likes this idea of future of AI and all that, read the book Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark. And he established the Future of Life Foundation years ago. And he's backed by Elon Musk and all that stuff. And it gives 12 different scenarios of the rise of AI. And I think he says pretty clearly it's not going to be Terminator, and they're not going to be evil, and they're not going to hate us. Just like you don't hate ants when you brush away their home to do a picnic. You don't hate them.
Oh, excuse me.
Significant to you.
I could do a line. I could do a line from the movie Contact right now if you want to hear it. What would I care about a bug? Is a good point. And what do you do with the bug? You squash them.
And not to
Yeah.
mention, even way before that happens. Listen, let's say
Right.
you give a machine a task. What machines do is they break down the task to tasks, and then they analyze the resources they need to execute the task.
Yeah.
Imagine humanity gives the machine a task that requires so much energy that when the machine starts analyzing where it can get the energy, it realizes that the obstacle that's eating up all its energy are humans. And then in trying to live up to the mission we gave them, it's nothing like the Terminator and all that stuff.
Right.
It's completely from a whole different, equally terrifying direction.
It's a different kind of terror, folks. Don't worry about it. Your grandkids
Listen, Elon Musk recently said it's either going to be really bad or really good.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with the Star Trek scenario of being really good and milk and honey, and everybody's going to be happy and not have to work anymore. And machines do all of our things for us, and we just live happily ever after. That's my positive outlook on it.
By the way, I am optimistic.
Yeah, I know. I am too. I just, prepare for the worst, expect the best type of thing. I'm going to go ahead and, I'm going to still get my farm with grow my own vegetables just in case, so it's okay.
I'll come visit.
All right, you should. So you're in Israel full time now. You're going to save the nation with your books.
Say what?
You're going to save the nation with your books.
I'll try to play my very, very small and humble part. Yeah, I'm in Israel. I travel a ton, too much.
So, yeah.
But yeah, my focus over the next year is going to be, I'm going to shift a lot of focus towards trying to play a role in
when will you're not, I'm pointing up here behind me, folks. You're Not Moving Slow Enough, one of my top 10 favorite books. When will that be done in Hebrew so you can get it to the government there and calm things down?
Should be done in less than 4 weeks. It'll be out. And then we'll be just giving it out, whoever wants it. You
can give it out, but I want you to do a FedEx package to the powers that be there and with a box of cookies or something, make sure they read it.
You know what? I didn't even think of doing that. I don't think that's a half bad idea.
Go right to the top, man. Give it to them.
That's a good idea.
And one more thing. Find out who their puppet masters are, who they respect, or who influences the influencers, and get them
to. You should be in creative publishing, and
What do you know? Well, I'm all about world peace, man. It's like our mission statement. I'll tell you a quick story. I was my coach was listening to some of my sales calls, right? So this happened right around the pandemic time. He's listening calls. Hey, Doug, I heard 2 of your calls. I'm going to tell you what I found out from your process here. Your first guy, you were excited, interested. You guys got along great. But the second call I heard, you were kind of cold, kind of like bored with the guy. What's up with that? I said, oh, what's your name? Oh, that guy. Oh, yeah. His book idea is all about him, his ego, what he wants for himself. I doesn't care. The other guy wants to change the world and make a difference, and it really excited me. So my coach said, well, why'd you talk to the second guy? I'm publishing, people call me, I have a conversation. He goes, stop talking to them. And I said, well, that's like a third of my calls. He said, stop talking to them. You're not going to publish them anyway. Why waste your time in theirs? I'm like, all right. Sales volume went down 30%. Revenue went up 300%.
I could try to explain that to you in decision-making theory that we use. We call it strategic tactical distraction. Any opportunity you have. If it's a strategic opportunity, the ROI will be ×3 or to the power of 3. If it's tactical, the ROI will be +3. And if it's a distraction, it'll be -3. And those 30% of your calls must have been a -3.
For sure. Because I wouldn't have done the book anyway. I'm like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. Here's how cool I am. I'm a TV star. I'm like, I don't care. Yeah. We can do it. Help. That's why I want your book in the hands of the important people, important, powerful, influential, whatever, because like you said, we can have one person just dial it down a bit there and save some lives.
We'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I'm generally optimistic, but government reconvenes in, I think, in a week or 2.
Yeah. Well, they can read English. Give them the English version while you're waiting for the Hebrew version.
No, unfortunately, some of the ministers can't read English.
Oh, I thought
that's bad. I'm telling you, we have 2 ministers. I don't even want to talk about it.
That's okay. I have to let go. All right. Well, good luck. I hope it comes from it. Anyway, the book is called You're Not Moving Slow Enough by Ariel Halevi, bestseller, one of my favorite books of all time, because it's just that powerful and important for you to influence and impact people. And the best way to do that is move a little slower.
I worked on that book for years.
Yeah.
And then I met you, and it was out within, I don't like, so
9
you're
months.
like I said, you're the godfather of that book.
Okay, let me tell you about it.
What can I tell you?
Yeah. So I expect you to get non-functional radical listening as a URL tonight. I want you to get that domain and think about that for your book title. And if you want to run a poll, let me know. We can run a poll and get it out there. But I love the concept of it because it definitely makes you think, which if you get someone to pause for 1 second and think, you're ahead of all the garbage out there. So
100%.
very good. Ariel, wonderful to talk to you again. We got to do this again. I think we should definitely have some other business things to talk about. But for right now, I want to thank you for your time today and leave people with we'll put your link to your book down below in the chat here, folks. So in the show notes, you get the show notes for today's show as well as a link to his book and any parting words of wisdom, sir.
Wow, you're putting me on parting words of wisdom.
Yeah, it could be a sentence or a paragraph. It's up to you.
Empathy. Empathy in today's day and age, the answer to almost everything that's wrong in our life is empathy. If you can find it within yourself to develop an empathetic predisposition towards people around you, I think that will cure the world. As big as that sounds, I actually think that's true.
One person at a time, it could work. Let's give it a shot. Got nothing else to do.
Thank you so much. I always love speaking with you.
My pleasure. Same here. Okay, thank you very much. That's Ariel Halevi. You're not moving slow enough. Super smart guy with a great book and a new one coming out. Check it out. Check out the show notes below. Download his book. Buy it. It's definitely worth your while. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.